So in this video, we're going to be discussing stagflation and what is stagflation and what that might look like inside of the economy, because it seems that that is a major discussion that has taken place within the mainstream media, the corporate media. I Googled that and hit the news feed just to see what would pop up, and man, I was blown away by how many news articles right now are talking about stagflation. So what is stagflation? And let's kind of to break it down really simply, like I went and looked at Wikipedia just to see how they described it, and I think that's probably the easiest or most simplest way to describe stagflation, is that it's inflation when you see higher prices. At the same time, you see a slowdown in growth, meaning that you have less people like actually operating within the economy, which generally means that you have high unemployment at the same time. So the stagflationary period is a real nightmare for the central banking system, when you consider that typically they would try to combat the inflationary scenario with higher interest rates, which would put even more pressure on the unemployment scenario, which would already be elevated in that stagflationary period. So let's kind of take an analogy to this, right? Because I know you guys love how I make up these analogies for for a lot of the economy with the beers and saws and gravity is everywhere always. But when you think about it from like construction, right? Now this is really good because I think this is a really good way to kind of describe what's going on when it comes to stagflation. If you can imagine like an interior wall, so like new construction or remodel or something like that, building an interior wall, and it starts with framing, 2x4 framing typically. If it's a plumbing wall, it's 2x6. But we're just going to say this particular wall, 40 feet long, cost about $200 in material. Now today it would probably be quite a bit more, but we're just going to assume it's $200. So $200 to build a 40-foot wall. Now you can imagine all the time that it takes to build this wall. Like not only getting the material, the carpenter to put it together, but then it's also, say, electric and plumbing wall. So you got the electrician and the plumber, all their material, all the cost that goes into this thing, right? It starts off with the $200 material that goes into this, right? And then all the added costs. So you can just imagine, you can just keep adding more cost into this however you want to go or how deep you want to take it. So now we think about what happens when you have an inflationary period that is broad for everybody, right? So now the material cost is going up, but not only is the material cost going up, the labor cost is going up, and all the other costs are going up, and everybody is kind of rising together at the same time. And although it is painful for the experience of when you go to buy stuff, but your added in or the added income that you are getting is offsetting this whole inflationary scenario until it gets to the point where the jobs become less. Now, just imagine this, because GDP ends up staying elevated during a time in which that you have a slowdown in economic activity. So you think about it like this: $200 went into the material to initiate this wall, this 40-foot wall, and all the carpenter's time and plumbers and electrician and everybody else who had to mess with this wall to get it to completion. That ends up going into a much smaller amount of material the next time $200 goes into purchasing the material for a wall. Now you're only going to get, what, 20 feet of wall or 30 feet of wall, whatever it is, right? You get less wall. That means less carpenter's time, less plumber's time, less carpenter's material or plumber's material, electrician's material. You see what I'm saying? All this time all of a sudden shortens up, but it's the same amount of money, right? The $200 that went into this, but the economic activity that came from it has slowed down quite a bit. So now there's all kinds of, like I said, scenarios that you can start putting into this, but you can see how the GDP, even though it's a dollar amount that is going into it, might be growing some. And you can say, well, there is some economic growth taking place, but really the economic activity that is coming from it is not, right? And this is where the unemployment begins to rise, because now if you have a slowdown in the amount of time that it takes to put out for the building of this wall, you have more people competing for that opportunity, right? And so at the same time that things that you go to purchase for a standard for your cost of living is going up, your wages, right? You want to increase those things in order to maintain that standard of living that you have, but now you're in competition with everybody else who's doing the same thing. right? And there's less jobs available. So again, this is the stagflation that begins to take place from this. Eventually it will roll over, but it's the nightmare that comes over from the central banking system as what do you really do about this? As the harder that you push to try and bring prices down, the more of an increase of unemployment and less economic activity you have coming from that, which makes the problem even worse. All right. How many people we got watching? 154, 5 minutes into this. I thought that this would be a very good discussion to have this morning. I'm going to be out here for maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes like usual. Not going to make it a very long live stream, but I thought it was a really good discussion, and I thought that was a pretty decent analogy to use to try and understand on a simple form how stagflation might operate within the economy, or at least in a simple form, in the way of building a wall. I think anybody could probably apply this kind of idea to, waiting tables or driving truck or doing whatever. It just doesn't matter. You can just apply it to whatever day job you have, but you would have something of a similar experience coming from it. All right, let's go check it out here. We have Brody. Hey, Simon. What is that? Grow Mechanic? Hello. Well, hello to you. All-nighter. Good morning, everyone. All right. I need to fish with the heart. Brody says, all-nighter. Good morning. Would it be? Okay. Uneducated Economist. You let me know. What's happening, Dan? All right. Growing Life Organic. If the economy goes belly up, will my credit score be worthless? I mean, that's a really hypothetical situation to think about. If the economy goes belly up and the whole banking system completely collapses, then I don't know what do you need credit for? I mean, there's nothing to go get credit from. You'd have to go to an individual person and say, hey, man, I need some money. So it would be your credit with them, or your credit worthiness with them. So yeah, there wouldn't be any credit. Does this guy go to work every day? Dang, that sucks. Yeah, do I go to work every day? I don't think I necessarily go to work every day, meaning like my day job's 5 days a week, but I put in some sort of effort towards something just about every single day. Yeah. So, yeah, I work every day. Beer saws and gravity are there always, right? Good morning, Brody, says all-nighter. All right, Jay, woohoo, another bank failure. Fed to drop rates to 0 on Monday. No kidding. All right, so that Mag 7 can make buybacks bigger. All right. Good morning, guys. Hit the like button, says Dishes. Thank you so much. Brody says, Jay, that's very unlikely. Yeah, I think we're joking here. All-nighter, I think. So GLO, what is GLO? Man, I'm terrible at this. Or shifted to a social credit score. It's the blue dice, man. Nice, yeah. Good morning, Dishes. New truck, congrats. No, not really. I've had it for a while. It's a 99 Ford Explorer. And good morning. Oh, that reminds me. I need to fix the windshield wiper. It broke yesterday. All right. Thanks, all-nighter hider. I can't figure out what Simon's saying until the die's been called. First Republic, Bank of Philadelphia just went under. Deposits insured by the FDIC and switched to Fulton Bank. All-nighter code breaker. All right. I wonder what Benny misclicks the stream again. Alright. I need the new drama. Hello from London. Big snowstorm in Colorado. Silver to the moon. What's the next fiat to look like? Japan's yen? Euro? No, okay. What's the next fiat supposed to look like? That's a pretty decent question, I guess. The next fiat that's going to exist is probably going to be stable coins. All right, like a coin backed by the U.S. dollar, but it's a cryptocurrency. That's probably going to be the next fiat currency and the only reason why I say that, and I'm pretty confident that's what it's going to be, simply because that's what the Federal Reserve talks a lot about. Right? They talk about the need to regulate these stable coins and how the stable coins can carry the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve, because anything that is backed by the dollar, 1 to 1, or with a fixed rate, monetary policy transfers through the dollar into that particular currency. So a stable coin suits the bill. It's like almost perfect. And like you think about like how the dollar replaced gold, stable coin can do the same thing to the dollar. And it doesn't, like, at the end of the day, once everybody is using stable coins as opposed to paper dollars or whatever, then who's to say what that stable coin can be backed by? Like we think about what it is that Ben Bernanke, like this is where like the what ifs and the hypotheticals really start to spin, but you really have to kind of understand what it is that has happened and been said in the past, because you think about what it is that stable coins would be, right? It's a cryptocurrency that is backed by the dollar 1 to 1, meaning like there's a vault with dollars in it, and then these people put out a cryptocurrency that people can use, and it's trusted however they make that trust happen, right? Because I don't trust any of this, but essentially, there would be some trust happening, and I would imagine that if you issued these stable coins through like welfare programs or something like that, then I don't think there would be any denying it. Okay, so now you got the stable coin that's backed by the dollar, and what's the dollar? Essentially, it's a liability of the Federal Reserve. What does the Federal Reserve have on their balance sheet? They have SDRs, a little bit of gold, but a whole bunch of treasuries, right? U.S. treasuries. Now, the Federal Reserve has already stated that the United States can't go any deeper into debt, or they shouldn't go any deeper into debt, or not. Hold on. The Federal Reserve says they're on an unsustainable debt path. There we go. I don't think they should or shouldn't or whatever. They're on an unsustainable debt path, is what they have said about the U.S. government and their treasury issuance. So now this becomes very crucial to the Federal Reserve to how do they maintain their liability issuance out there to the world who is in demand of their liabilities, meaning that there is a whole world out there who has written contracts that are due in dollars. Okay. Are you guys following me here? Right. So now the Federal Reserve is stuck in a position and they're like, okay, well, wait a minute. We need to issue out all these liabilities, make sure that we can get them out there to the rest of the world so that they can fulfill these contracts, because all these contracts are written in dollars that didn't have anything to do with the United States, the government, the banking system, the people, the corporations, or nothing. These are private individuals and sovereign nations, individuals outside of the United States who are doing this, creating these debts that are due in dollars. Now, the Federal Reserve has this demand for their liabilities. They're like, crap, man, that's a lot of demand going on out there. How do we fulfill this demand for their liabilities with the mass issuance of dollars out there to the rest of the world? Now, the only way they can do it right now is by buying up them treasuries, which means the United States has to go into mass debt in order to issue out the treasuries for the Federal Reserve to buy. But the Federal Reserve has already stated in Ben Bernanke's speech from 2002 that they could be buying the debt of a foreign nation. Very interesting to think about. So now you have let's think about it to the stable coin again, right? So now you got a stable coin. See, this is the stuff that spins through my head, guys, right? So now you got this stable coin. It's backed by the dollar. The dollar is a liability of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve on their balance sheet has U.S. treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, gold, SDRs, and now loading up on foreign contracts, foreign debt, foreign treasuries, so to speak, right? Instead of U.S. treasuries, it's the debt of another nation. And now they can fill their balance sheet up with that, right? Create the dollars that are now being used as stable coins, and stable coins are now circulating the world, right? The stable coins are backed by the debt of a foreign nation, essentially. Not all of it, or some of it, or whatever. All right. You heard it here first. I don't know. I mean, does that seem reasonable to you guys? Let's go check out that super chat. All right. Angry capitalist. I love it. All right. Oops. Oh, God, I almost deleted that, man. I am sorry. I did that earlier to poor Robert. Oh, shit. I did it again. Dang it. I am so sorry, bro. Do the message again, man. I am sorry. I'm trying to work on my little tiny phone. I got this one little screen and it pops up and I deleted it, man. I am sorry. So I'm going to cruise back down here to the beginning of this thing. I would like to see the comment again, bro. I'm really sorry about that. All right. Stable coins, they have to convince people it's worthy. No, they don't. Like, they don't have to convince people it's worthy. I think that if they issued it through welfare, through emergency distributions, so they're like, oh, hey, man, you want a stimulus package? Guess what? You're using stablecoin. And people would be like, whatever, I'll take it, as long as I can go buy whatever I want with it. And they'll be like, yep, you can do whatever you want with it. And people will be like, okay, no problem. And they're like, okay, just download the app. There you are, set up, ready to go. No problem. And I think that, or here, use this card or something like that. And yeah, I think it would be almost, I don't think it would have any problems with it. I think it would actually, people would beg for it to happen, especially if it was like came in the way of free money. Free money, my favorite. All right. You're able to unhide it? Oh, let's go up and check it out. No, it looks hidden, bro. Hide user channel. All right. I didn't see it up there. Angry capitalist, can you type the message again in the chat, please? Yeah, please do. All right. I cruised up there. It's not I don't know, maybe I need to refresh my screen somehow here, but it's not coming up on mine. So, how is the demand not able to meet by sending over straight cash with the demand so high? Okay, how do you send cash straight with the demand? The best way to get rid of inflationary factors unless stable coins is the vehicle for what? Right? To meet by sending over straight. I mean, see, that's just the thing. Like that's the issue that I believe the Federal Reserve really has is like, what are they? They're not necessarily limited on what it is that they're going to buy. They have more options, especially when it comes to the world's debt out there. There's like, a lot of things that they can put on there. But how much do they want to push the United States into being the debt issuer of the assets that they buy so that they can provide the world with the liabilities that are in demand to pay off the debts that they have created? And then how do you get those dollars out there to the world? See, this is the reason why you should really study the four economic theories, right? Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma. Uh, what was the other one? The one I always, I mean, besides the Cantillon effect and the bullwhip effect, that was the one I wanted to bring up, the bullwhip effect, right? So between those ones, if you study those four economic theories, right, then you're going to pretty much guarantee that anything that you are seeing out there is going to have at least some sort of resemblance to one of those three, if not, or one of those four, if not a combination of them. All right. And now I know it's like, some of this stuff, especially when it comes to Cantillon's essay, because that stuff is like hundreds of years old. Gresham's laws goes all the way back, like I think to the 1500s, if I got it right. Triffin's dilemma was figured out back in the 60s, if I got that one right. But these economic theories, when you start to really study them and look at them, then you can really see how these dilemmas are really, or these issues, or these forces that start to take place within the economy, they really start guiding where it is that you can see how things are going to end up going, right? Um, it's like, oh, and what was the question? I already forgot what the question was. Oh yeah, about sending dollars straight over. So how do you get those dollars out of the United States? Right? So this is really where the United States has been like the purchaser of the world's goods, right? Like if they buy more than they sell, then they will import stuff and export dollars. Or you can just give it away, right? And war effort or whatever. I mean, you just get it out of the country however you can into whatever systems that you can get out there, right? Whether it's through donations or, t- tactical efforts or whatever it is that's going on, to get that money out of the United States. Once you get it out, it starts finding its way around. And that's kind of what they do here in the United States when you think about stimulus packages and stuff. It doesn't really matter where the money goes, right? So long as it starts filling the sluices, that's all they care about, right? So if they start dumping money into the United States to pay somebody like an extreme amount to, do some like mundane job or whatever, That's doesn't matter to them, right? Because what that guy is going to do is he's going to take that money, he's going to go and spend it. That spending of the money is going to start finding its way through the circulation of other goods and services out there, and that's going to start picking up the money velocity. And this is really what they were looking for when it comes to the stimulus packages to begin with. So again, it doesn't really matter where they spend the money, so long as it's just getting spent. That's what's really important about it. But ultimately, that's the Federal Reserve's like problem right now. Like, how they got this world demanding their debt. I'm not sorry, this world demand of debt that is due in their liability. How do they come up with their liability? Like people say they can just print it, but they got to have something to print up and buy, right? And that purchasing of U.S. debt is what the number one thing right now. And they're saying, man, and we keep doing this, and you guys are going under. You're going under probably anyway, right? I mean, that's ultimately what's going to end up happening once the debt issuance of the United States comes to an end, right? And once, then our way of life, how do we maintain that? How do we, if there's no demand for our treasuries, right, then what ends up happening is the price of it falls and the yields begin to rise and the interest rates go up substantially. This is going to slow down the economy dramatically, and if we stop doing the imports, then people are not going to be buying our treasuries, and it's going to get even worse. Now, if it wasn't a situation in which that people were like, you know what, screw the United States, we're just going to start doing deals with each other, which a lot of people say is happening from the BRICS nations and stuff like that, then that would be even more devastating to the United States. And I think this is what a lot of people are fearing. However, that's not what's happening. All right. What is happening is that there's a huge demand for the U.S. dollars outside of the United States, and that's the problem. Right? The problem that the Federal Reserve now faces is like, how do we print up these dollars and not drive the United States even deeper into debt? Right? Or, and worse, slow the economy down to the point that everybody's standard of living starts to deteriorate because the growth is no longer taking place. Right? Now, again, like I'm not trying to figure things out. I'm just observing this, right? It's just like anything else out there. It's just like, man, what do you do? Right? Like to me, I get into gold and Bitcoin because it pretty much gets me out of all that, right? It's just like if you're out of all that stuff. I mean, Bitcoin to a lesser extent, but definitely the gold and silver. You escape yourself from all that. Right? Now, does it escape you to the point that you're going to be an ultimate safety? I don't know about that either, but at least you're not part of that. All right. Let's see here. Angry capitalist. All right, Yui, thoughts on contracting or in some countries collapsing demographics effect on monetary policy and systems? Yeah, actually, that's angry capitalist. Thank you again for the $5, and I really am sorry about that. I did not mean to remove the comment. Yeah, that's a major problem. In fact, that was the issue that John Williams was bringing up in his speech, Monetary Policy for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. They said that there was 3 problems that they were facing from a low neutral interest rate world, right? And those 3 problems that they were facing inside of there was demographics, right? The older population and, their burden on the economy, because pretty much they do not participate nearly as much as far as activity within the economy as contributing to the economy, but they do take. So that's like a major issue within the monetary policy is the growing older demographic of population. The slowdown in global growth, right, was a major one. And then what was the third one, guys? I can't remember. What was it? Damn it. Population growth and I don't know. I can't remember the last one right now, man. Wow, I must be really tired. I've only read that speech 400 times, and now it's going to drive me nuts until I figure out what it was. Where's that speech at? Damn it. I must have thrown it out now. That thing was getting tattered old. Anyway. But that is one of the major issues that they're facing. And, that's funny, too, because a lot of people want to blame certain particular, social events or political events or environmental events on the slowdown in the birth rates and stuff like that. And, all of it makes sense. I mean, I'm not trying to deny any of that stuff as far as, the accuracy or whether or not it's factual. I mean, I think all that stuff is true. But that's not what's happening, right? What's happening is that the Western civilizations out there, the Western nations, the societies, the ones who have advanced standards of living, basically the rich nations, right? Okay. These nations have lower population growth, lower birth rates because of the chances of deterioration of their standard of living increases when they have children. See, this is something that is very weird to think about. It's kind of counterintuitive, really, when you think about it, because you think, okay, so if they have more money, then they would have the ability to raise children. That doesn't make any sense. But that actually is the problem. Because they have more money, they have a higher standard of living, and because they have a higher standard of living, children would deplete that, right? Would take away from that, would diminish it. And so if you lower your standard of living by having children, then there's going to be a tendency to not want to have children because it'll lower your standard of living. Now, if you think about it from a poorer nation, why do these people have lots of children? It's because having children doesn't lower their standard of living. In fact, it could increase it in a lot of ways, especially if you get many hands to work. So now lowering your standard of living isn't really happening when you have many children in a poorer nation, because ultimately the lesser standard of living would be death, right? So, the chances of them moving up into a higher standard of living is the only possibility when you have that, when you're in a poor, poverty-stricken society, right? And so this is the reason why you have a population decline in societies that have a higher standard of living, or even moving into a higher standard of living, is because they don't want to see themselves depleting that or diminishing it by having children. And that's described in this essay. Yeah. All right. Having children help on the farm and give more hands to build. Boomers in the suburbs are dependent on government. Yeah. Excess wealth deters women from wanting to have children. It's paradoxical. Yeah. I mean, I would assume that as well, and then, you know, a lot of it has to do with the way society is nowadays, especially with the education, of, you know, like, generally speaking, smart women don't want to be with dumb men, and more women are getting degrees than men now. So it's just like, yeah. Okay. Person with a brain on their head understands you have to have money first to have a kid. If you don't have good paying job and affordable housing like boomers did, how do you start a family? Well, father, no. I mean, I intuitively speaking, what you are saying makes perfect sense, right? You are absolutely right. Go look around at reality, okay? Just saying. Now, I understand what you were saying makes sense, right? I mean, if you have money, you have the ability to raise children, right? But take a look back. Anytime that you had a lesser standard of living, you have more children. It's just the way it is, right? And in like a lot of things out there that are counterintuitive to what you would ever believe, right? This is one of them. And I mean, if this dude can describe it, right, then why would we deny it? My kids raised my standard of living. They return more than they cost in dollars. Yeah, and I can tell you, they raised my standard of living too, because I started pushing harder to do more with my life, right? After I had kids, because now all of a sudden I had this responsibility that I was beyond just me. So it actually forced me to go out there and do more, and raise my standard of living so that I could, provide them a better life. So yeah, I agree. Kids raise my standard of living too. 100K bill doesn't mean when I'm sorry, I'm trying not to cuss anymore because it's bad for the algorithm. Less than 47% own homes in Denmark. High tax doesn't save you money. This channel is growing so fast. Congrats. Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. I guess Economic Ninja said that somebody with like a 200 or 200 with like a 2 million subscriber YouTube channel was talking about the Uneducated Economist. So I was just like, cool, who was it? But I don't think he ever replied back. So I guess I gotta, and I can tell when that happens too, because all of a sudden I'll get like a boost of people, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And it's, because somebody else is giving me a shout out, and, I have a bunch of people come over and check out the channel. Children don't create GDP for households. They are expensive. This is why our birth rate is declining. The implications of that are lost on most folks. All right. Father, no, exactly. Until you move to the country for some reason, having kids in the country seems easier, even if costs are not really less. Yeah, it's because raising kids in the country doesn't really cost you anymore to have another little kid running around there, right? I mean, they don't eat that much, they're just a little kid. So trying to provide for another little kid in the country, they don't eat, they don't take up that much space. Like, it's just like, that's not a big deal. Trying to provide for two teenagers in the city, right? Very different from trying to provide for two teenagers in the country with, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old and stuff like that, right? No problem in the country. Everybody's cool and happy. But in the city, now you got apartments, you got to share rooms, you got to share space. It's not going over very well. In the country, it's just like, hey, somebody can go hang out in the barn if they want to get away from everybody, Dude writes books doesn't make him the end of all genius. Huh. Isn't this impacted by non-market forces as ideological reasons, or is this part of that? I mean, I would imagine that, people's beliefs and ideas have an impact to everything, I mean, even now, the way people look at, relationships and how they interact with each other is much different than it was even 50 years ago, I mean, way different than it was 50 years ago, but even just 20 years ago. Things are different in the way that, that people behave. And so because of that, then you're going to have economic impacts because of that. But is it them creating the economy, or is the economy in a situation that allows them to now behave in that fashion? See, this is where I think a lot of times people look at, well, nowadays people behave this way and this is what's causing this. No, that's not. I think it's what the reason is that the economy has grown to such a position in which that people are now able to conduct themselves in this way. And it's very obscured and very weird and different for people who maybe grew up in a different era, and they're like, man, we didn't behave like this. We didn't understand this, So, I mean, I always get a kick out of it when somebody says, well, back in my day, we used to work hard too. And it was just like, yeah, it doesn't, back in your day, you used to be able to have a 9-to-5 job and be able to provide for an entire family. That's different. That is a different situation than we live in today. We can't do that anymore. Not here, not where I live, right? It ain't gonna do it. I mean, you can struggle really hard. You might be able to have an apartment struggle and get by or something like that with a 9-to-5, but it's gonna be very difficult, right? And I understand it was difficult back in the day too, but man, a single job could provide that much for an entire household. That is so cool. You know how awesome of a feeling I think that would be for me to be able to do that for my family? I mean, that would just be like the ultimate for me. I can't do it. I mean, my wife has to work too, right? And all the other shit that I do, And so it's not the same era. It's a different time, and it's going to be different. And the separation between the rich and the poor is going to get worse. And this is where I think a lot of people are like hopeful of a candidate or a president or a politician or a administration or a system of some sort that can come in and make that different. It's not going to happen at all. Like, I don't even attempt to ponder the idea of it, because it's not going that way, right? It's going to get worse. Unless there's an entire collapse of the monetary system here in the United States, the separation between the rich and the poor will get worse, right? Period. End of story. Like, there's no way that it can go any other way. It's just like, it doesn't work any other way. It'll fall or grow worse. And so it's best to understand it for what it is. That way you can try and, like, position yourself best, as best you can. What really is most important, I think the young really need to understand it the most, because they actually have the best way of taking advantage of it is by compounding interest. And if they could position themselves early and contribute to it early, then by the end of their life, they're not in as bad a position, or they wouldn't be. But they have to take advantage of it early, and that's the whole point of compounding interest, is that youth is the most rewarding thing about it, is that you have the time, right? People like me, we don't have the time. Like, even if we were to, like, do it for a while, it's just like, by the time we were like, hey, look at what I got, like, it doesn't matter, you're so old, it doesn't do you any good, right? I mean, I have to hope for a miracle that I hit the right thing, right? Hope that Bitcoin goes to $1 quadrillion or whatever. I mean, it's best to just understand it and not try to fix it, because there is no fixing it. Just understand it for what it is, right? You can't, like, this is something that I was like, I guess, I've always known this, but it's like, once you say it out loud, it makes a lot more sense. If you're dwelling on the past, you're depressed, right? If you're scared of the future, you have anxiety. There's people who live in both, right? I tried to pull that to the center right now. What is going on, right? I know about the past. I've read it, right? I've read stuff. We discuss it all the time about what's going on there. And I'm not worried about the future, right? Because I don't want to live in depression and anxiety, right? So I got to figure out what it is that I'm doing right now, right? You live in the now. It was at Eric Tolle. What is that guy's name? Eckhart Tolle. Power of Now. Well, if you don't invest, you'll live until... Oh, where did that go? Am I doing that? Am I deleting comments by accident? All right. It would be really bad. Okay, let's see here. Why not measure our money by atomic clock instead of unstable nations or elements like gold? I have never heard of anyone say this. What's an atomic clock form of money? Like, I don't understand what that means. Is it a time-limited money? Is that kind of what it is? I mean, money can be any, like, to me, I don't look at, I guess I just don't see it as a singular thing. Like, I see it as just another component of the economy, just like everything else. Like money, Bitcoin, gold, my skills, my knowledge, other people, my network, like all of it is currency, all of it's economy, all of it's everything. Like, it's me, right? I'm the economy. There is no higher level of the economy than me. I am it. Like, there is nothing else, right? And I don't know, like, everybody else might look at it as like, man, they have control over it. They don't have control over me. I'm it. I mean, like, I'm in control of my decisions and the things that I do and where it is that I put my money and all that other stuff. I'm in control of that 100%. There's nobody else. And I don't expect anybody else to do anything about that except for me. It's so, like, there is no better system. It's just is. You just understand it for what it is. Like, what's atomic money? What's crypto? What's gold? What's a dollar bill? What's your services? Skills. All right, 400 people watching. Right on. What time is it? It's 10 o'clock. All right. What? 38 minutes into it. I don't want to go too late here. Okay. Uneducated economists have been looking for stable entity to make trade possible. I understand they've been looking for it, right? But how do you govern? Like, you got to have somebody who can govern that without bias, or without, like, it's not possible. Like, it's not possible. Human nature doesn't allow it. It's just not going to take place, right? I mean, we can wish and hope and dream and pray, right? I mean, it's just like, but to me, like, I don't even ponder the idea of it anymore, because there's no point into it. There's absolutely, like, nothing that I can gain of value by trying to figure out how to fix the system. It's not going to, there's no value inside of that, because it ain't going to happen, right? The only thing I can do is just make the best decisions for myself. Atomic clocks are based on physics. There are only 21 million Bitcoin. The halving refers to the reward rate of each block of data. Such a defeatist mindset. Sad. Huh. Economists have been looking for stable. Oh, we already read that. It's not a defeatist mindset. That is not even it. It's more of an acceptance, right? See, like, to me, there is nothing to be fixed. Like, that would be defeatist. Is like, oh man, just gonna have to suffer the consequences of all this horrible life and be in depression. Like that's not the way I live. I mean, I'm quite excited about life and the things that are going on with it. I'm happy with myself and things that I've done. Like to me, I don't live in depression. The economy is a very depressive thing to look at. You think about it, it's called the dismal science, right? They don't call that for no reason. Right? It's already something that is it's already something that's kind of a depressive thing with crashes and people losing everything they got and then other people getting greedy rich and so there's a lot to talk about that makes it very uncomfortable discussion for a lot of people, but to me it's not a good or bad thing. Like, what are you defeated over? What, your own efforts? That's what defeated you. That's it. Like, I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Like, I mean, I don't anticipate some politician's gonna fix it. Like, I mean, you go live in that dream. I'm not gonna do that. I have better things to do than to wish for that. Because no, I mean, I got way better things to do. So, I mean, I can figure things out for myself. I mean, I can figure out where it is that I need to put some money. I mean, I may not make the better decision that somebody else might be able to make, but I'm going to do the best that I can with what I got, and what I know. uh, Stop putting your future in politicians' hands and make your own future. No one is coming to save you. That's right. Nobody's coming. Click thumbs up, fellas. Yeah, thank you so much. We have 155 likes with 371 people watching. $10 in super chats because you people are always so generous. Thank you so much for that. All right. If you can't buy bread with it, then it's worthless. Yeah. All right. You guys are all talking to each other. Okay. How many properties do political class own themselves? Probably a lot. I mean, you think about it, they wouldn't gotten there by accident. They didn't get there by accident. This is like, you know, I think about some of the things that I have achieved and done, right? And I'm not trying to brag by any means, because to be honest with you, I am absolutely blown away that I was able to actually do some of the things that I've done. But when I think about it, it was just like, man, I've met some pretty cool people, right? And like got to have really good conversations with them, like not just any joke, like get contact information so I can communicate with them anytime I want, right? This is pretty cool, that I was able to do that. Now, I'm a nobody. You think about that, right? Like I am just some dude who works at a lumberyard in the middle of the Pacific Northwest, right? Like I'm not special. I don't have education. I don't have business. I don't have family of wealth or anything like that going on. None of that stuff, right? But yet I was able to achieve at least, some pretty cool things, by putting forth the effort and trying hard and, being honest with my communications and everything I was doing out there. I was able to get to some pretty cool level stuff. Now, you think about somebody who actually has opportunity in their life, who has people who know the networks, who know the places and all that other stuff, what it is that they could do. I mean, you don't have a chance. There's no chance, And so if you're not in that family, if you're not in that group, if you're not part of that system, if you're not getting in. There's like you're not, right? I mean, the rare chance that it does happen doesn't get any kind of real respect, not from the rest of them or anybody else. And so it's just like it's the saddest thing in the world. Like I can't stand politics. Not a single one of them do I hear out there, outside of maybe a few of them, that actually care about Constitution and behaving within the confines of it. It's like almost nothing. They're like, well, nobody else is doing it, and if we want to play the game, uh, 45. All right, it's a big club, and you ain't in it, George Carlin. That's right. I mean, once you kind of get it, once you see it, then you're like, it's like, yeah, that's true, right? So there's nothing I can do. There's like, it's the big club. You ain't in it. They have their game, right? So it's just best to understand it, right? It's like, I mean, you can vote, I mean, whatever, I mean, you can go to one of these two guys, whatever, right? So you can vote and, have your peace of mind that you did your part that way. But really, the bigger issue is to step back and look at it to see for what it is, and then be able to position yourself appropriately for it, and not wish or hope and pray and dream that it could be different, or that it's awesome or that it's not awesome, or any of that other stuff doesn't matter, right? But being in the right place at the right time because of the situation that you are now facing, that's really what it's all about, right? Yeah. And really looking at it, from that neutral type of position too, right? Because that's really going to give you give you that objective view over it all, instead of being, so committed to just one way. Like it's amazing to me, some of the comments. Like, I've been scrolling Facebook occasionally, and I just can't do it. Like, I mean, I see some of the comments and some of the things that are going on, and it's just like, man, I forgot why I don't spend time here, and I have to bail out. Thank you for all the work you've put in. True. Well, thank you, Law. Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, man. I've really enjoyed it. Father, no, if the person you are trading, or this is from Tyra, the person you are trading with sees value in what you have to trade its value, but that's silver, gold, steel, or salt. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's really where, like, I think a lot of times, just in that whole idea is like a lot of people want the government to have a system in place that is going to be awesome for everybody. Like, I mean, it's what one of the arguments that I see pretty much always going on within the political arena. And to me, like, I don't understand that, because nobody could possibly do things in a way that is going to make it awesome for me. Right? Like, I want it awesome for, if it's gonna change, then I want it to be changed and awesome for me. Like, if you're gonna ask me about it and want my personal opinion, and I wanted a certain particular change, I want it to be exclusively for me. Like, I don't care about what everybody else wants, because there's too many people out there for me to try and make a decision based on what it is that they want, or what they should have, or what's fair. It doesn't come down to that anymore. It's what I want. Period. Right? That's why I don't expect them to give me what I want, because that's not gonna happen. Right? It's like, the only person who can go get me what I want is me. Truck driver wants to teach you economy. Yeah? Or some guy who works at a lumberyard wants to. If it's hard for people to digest all the stuff, even if you explain them over and over again, some will never get it. It's all black magic. Well, yeah, and that's true. Well, the thing about money is really difficult to understand, because we were never really properly trained on what money is from an early age. We just kind of just learned about it. It was just like, we see our parents using dollars, they swipe cards, we just kind of don't really think about how this money creation is really taking place. We don't really understand how this banking system really has evolved to what it is. We just assumed that there was somebody in the background who kind of penciled out this whole idea of how the economy could function, and said, here's our game plan, this is how it works. And it's like a functioning system or business that is happening out there. That's not it. It's very organic. And that's what I think a lot of people should really take into consideration, is that there is no control. Its control is an illusion. There's some control over the financial system when you think about it in that sense, where there's regulations and how the banking systems to operate, and then how do we interact with that financial system of things, with credit ratings and our income and payment systems and stuff like that we have going on. But that's part of the economy, right? I mean, there's still another part of the economy where I can just go over to the neighbor's house, mow the lawn for $20 and make some money doing that. Doesn't have anything to do with anybody out there, right? And that's an economy, part of the economy as well. So when you think about what the economy is, it's not the financial system, like the banking system, like the Federal Reserve. They're interacting in a major way because it affects our life personally so much because of the interest rates and the credit ratings and the way we conduct our business and the houses and stuff that we buy. But it's not the economy, right? That's part of the economy. The decisions you make, that's the economy, right? That's why when it drives me crazy, even I use like the economy in a broad sense when I do my titles of my videos and stuff, but I don't look at the economy as a whole, right? The economy is an individual. It's literally an individual person and how it is that we collectively interact. And that's the economy. And it's, and once you see it that way, you can see that the government is something separate from the financial system, which is separate from the precious metals, which is separate from cryptocurrencies, which is separate from a black market, which is separate from, and you separate all these things, and then you see how they interact and you see how they conduct themselves. And then people say, well, this will just happen. It's just like, really? It just happens by magic? It's just like, that's just like a magical thing that takes place. Yeah. Economy is shareholderism metric. Yeah. All right. I have been listening to your videos for a while and you provide good description of situation, but we would like to see some tactical advice. I don't know how else to give it to you, man. You have to do this for yourself. That is the tactical advice. Like, if let me see here. Hold on. Let me finish your thing. A tactical advice and ways to benefit from the situation or how to deal with it. I mean, I don't know how to describe it any more than I am right now. Like, everything that I've said for the last 10 minutes has been just that, describing just exactly that, right? This stuff is not easy to understand. Right? You have to understand it for yourself. And starting with like questions on what is the Federal Reserve is probably one of the best places that you could begin. Now, I have been doing this for 20 plus years, right? That I have been studying economics. I have studied it very hardcore for the last 15, right? I mean, it's just like every day I do research on the internet, asking questions, reading speeches, going through old theories, listening to interviews, doing whatever it took to try and grasp as much information and understanding of how the economy works as I could. I mean, if you're questioning what a bond is, research bonds for a month, 2 months. You study anything for 6 months, you'll be an expert on it. Right? I mean, I guarantee you, it's like the internet will teach you anything you want to know, like anything you want to know, anything, and it's all free, and all you have to do is just keep asking the questions. Now, it's boring. That's hard, right? And so I think the idea of having a shortcut ain't gonna happen. Right? You can watch my videos. So like every single video that I have done, I got like, what, I don't know, 1,500 of them or something out. Right? You can watch every one of the videos. Let's just play those every day for the next few years. And you might be able to grasp, a lot of everything that I've pretty much learned. I mean, I've talked about just about everything, but it's going to take time and it's going to take work, and it's not something that you can just apply, right? Because I don't know who you are. I don't know how you need. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know, your situation. Everybody's going to be different, and what it is that you need to do in order to apply it to yourself is to understand how monetary policy is going to change and in effect in interact with you, right? That's how you do it. That's like, I can't explain it any more than that. All right. Da, da. UE isn't a licensed financial advisor, and only you know your own circumstances, so that's why he doesn't give personal financial advice. That's exactly right. I couldn't do it anyway, even if I wanted to. I mean, even if I wanted to, I couldn't give you financial advice because I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like like I don't even think that way. Like a financial advisor actually thinks in that kind of fashion. I don't think like that. What I think about is like how monetary policy is going to, change the way that I'm behaving, how it is that my customers are behaving, how it is that, the builders, sentiment is changing. Like this is the things that I think about because I have a personal view of it. Like I can see it firsthand. So when I take on the understanding of economics and the theories behind it, now I can apply it firsthand to my job where I do what I do for a living every day, 9 to 5, answering the phones and ringing customers up and stuff like that. I can see firsthand what's going on. I can see slowdowns and pickups and, how it is that people are behaving, the conversations that they're having, the excuses they're giving me for why these prices are so high, which is always a good one, because I love how, I mean, I just couldn't help myself. I said it the other day. A guy was just complaining. It was just like, well, thanks a lot, Biden, for a product. And I was just like, well, are you going to thank him for the cheap 2x4s? I mean, 2x4s are cheaper than they were back in 2017, so, I mean, are you going to thank him for that? And he just kind of gave me a dirty look because of course he wasn't approving of that kind of statement. But we were joking anyway, and we're friends, so it was like I mean, it was like the sarcasm being thrown back and forth was mutually understood. So it was like I wasn't just doing that to just any old customer. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I generally like a pretty good people pleaser when it comes to being the customer service kind of guy. Yeah. All right. Do you think traditional education or college is worth it anymore? Just curious how you are maneuvering your son through this economy and the new one going forward. Um, I am not a fan of everybody running off and getting a degree that they have no intentions on doing anything with. Like that to me was a really bad idea, right? Um, what happened here in the United States during the great financial crisis and the push, because like when I was in school, I graduated in 1995. There was a push to go to college, but there wasn't like a major push to go to college, right? It was just like, hey, what are you doing? I don't know. I'm going to go to work. All right, have fun. Right? I mean, that was like literally about how much like, interaction with like going to college expectations that I was I was receiving from people. So, the idea of like going to college was only really being pushed really hardcore onto the people. You know, I saw it really heavily like during the great financial crisis and shortly after that. That's when it really kind of took off. And to me, like I almost think that that was a ploy to create the instruments of debt that could then be part of the government's balance sheet. So you think about it, like the United States government, not the Federal Reserve, but the government itself holds that debt, holds those student loans. They're referred to as student loan asset-backed securities, slabs, like literally, right? And a huge portion of the government's financial balance sheet, like the financial portion of their balance sheet, sits these slabs. I mean, it's just an insane amount. So I think to myself, it was just like something like that was a ploy that took place so the government, not the Federal Reserve, the government itself, could then put these things on their balance sheet, creating the instruments of debt so that they could, I guess probably have the money or just get the money out there being spent into the schools, which would then like fill the sluices again with money for bringing us off the brink of chaos, during that time. So I don't know, did I explain that right? Like the whole idea of like getting these students to borrow the money so that the money could be created to go out there into the system, which basically, funneled through the schools. Right? And so now it was just like, well, that you can do that one good time, right? But then you don't have that increase all of a sudden of people who are willing to do that. Now you just have a steady flow of it. So does the degree help? I mean, maybe. I mean, if you got a profession in which you need it, if you're going into a line of business in which they require it, then yeah, I guess it would help. But most people that I know who have a degree work regular day jobs, right? Because I mean, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people I know who work regular day jobs have degrees. There we go. And it's not doing anything for them except for burdening them down with student loan payments and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend on what it is that he wants to do. I'm not encouraging him one way or the other. Yeah. Besides, he's going to be a ball player when he grows up. Banks were promised as stable entities for money along with government controls to fight inflation and other worries. Well, I understand what they were sold to us as. You know, I mean, I understand what like. Gosh, I wish I could go back and find it. There was a really great congressional testimony back in I want to say it was like the 30s where Congress was drilling the Fed and saying, "What is this that we are about ready to experience here? Because it looks like you're about ready to start monetizing the debt. It looks like that's what you're trying to do here." And the government knew that that would be a bad idea. For those of you who don't understand monetizing the debt, it's when they actually create dollars to buy treasury straight from the treasury, like monetizing their debt. Now, that's not the way it works, although that is the way it works. It's not the way it works because the Federal Reserve has to buy from the open market, basically going to the big banks and buying it from them. So everything that the Federal Reserve is buying has already been purchased by the market first. Like the Fed doesn't buy directly from the Treasury, the Fed buys from the primary dealers. And so this is why they're not monetizing the debt, but they're essentially monetizing the debt. But anyway, in this congressional testimony, they were like really grilling the Fed about this whole idea about them monetizing the debt and whether or not it was going to be pushed into the future. And sure enough, I mean, it would be good to go back and read that thing again because I bet you there's probably a lot of good insight in that. All right, can't understand economics at all without understanding political pressures. I don't believe that. Drones just made us Navy obsolete and cost to Yemen, tanks, Ukraine. Okay, I'm not talking about the social impacts that a lot of that stuff has. When you're talking about economics, the economy itself created the situation in which those things that you are describing happens. Right? That's important to understand. Like they're not creating the economy. The economy allowed that to happen. That's the difference inside of this. Right? If people were not as industrious and minded as they were, they would never have been able to accumulate the ability to have a government power that then says, here, push this way. Right? It's because the people allowed it to take place. They pushed for it. They were industrious minded, trying hard to create things that were making a better life for themselves, and then powers came in over that. Like it had to happen first. The economy had to do it first. Right? Like a group of men can't come in and say, okay, you know what? All you people out there with no education, no skills, no tools, no idea, get together, put your stuff, get going, be innovative, be smart, be productive, and do all that stuff so I can have control over you. Right? Doesn't work that way. Right? It doesn't work like that. The people have to rise first. And then the economy puts it in a situation that things like that war, or, whatever chaos that comes from it, whatever you want to describe, right? That all comes after that. And that's where I think a lot of people really need to understand it, is that the people themselves are in control. They don't know it. And whatever it is that they are allowing to happen, they are allowing that to happen. Any horrible situation that is existing within their lives, they are allowing it. All right. It's sad to say, like a lot of people say, I don't have control over this. You're right. It's because you don't understand that you're allowing it to take place. So that way you don't have any control. And that's what's hard about it. It's like it's difficult because everybody wants to have it be their way. That's if it doesn't go their way, they kill each other. It's just like, it's sad to see, but it's just the case. And they wouldn't be that way if they didn't have the rise in power to begin with. If they weren't, trying to go for a better life on their own side, creating the inequalities and the impoverishments and everything else that goes with it, then you would never exceed these things, right? But that's not the way human nature works. It's just the way it goes. And it's going to continue to go this way. There's nothing you can really do about it. Like, I mean, there is things that you should try to do about it. We should all try to get along. We should all try to do our part to be, productive members to society and not be ruthless bastards who cheat and screw everybody else over. That's not the way we conduct ourselves. We try to do it in a way that is, symbiotic for the rest of the world out there. I mean, that's what you try to do, but you can't expect everybody to do that. I mean, and I don't expect to deal with people who do that. Like, I don't deal with people who do that. If that's the type of person they're going to be, then they can go do that with somebody else until they don't have anybody to talk to or deal with anymore, and then they don't get to play anymore. Right? That's the way it should really go down. But it won't. Right? What will happen is people will lie and cheat and steal and be greedy and, push for more power and do all that other stuff. And you can see it happening. And it's best to understand that we created it, by being industrious, minded people pushing for a better way and pushed into luxuries and pushed into all the other stuff that went out there that created that situation that allowed that to happen. All right. Everything costs. Some are more efficient. Building small modular reactors at scale, lowering costs, implementing best practices, lowering the footprint and time to deploy seems reasonable to me. Yeah. And I mean, I love all the ideas and innovations and things that people come up with. I mean, like, I'm proud of the things that we have done. People get scared of like self-driving cars and stuff like that. To me, I am not. I am looking forward to the conveniences that are coming. And it doesn't scare me. Like, I can see how it can be scary. I could see the scary things that can come from it. And I do have like concerns, but it's not nearly as much as I'm enjoying the idea of like having a better way, a higher standard of living, better health, better food, better everything that comes from it. And it's really your perspective and where it is that you're going with it and how you acquire these things. Like, my family just took off to go to a plant sale to go get the veggies for the garden, right? So, I mean, we're about ready to, raise a bunch of food for ourselves. And that kind of mindset of being in there on a consistent, steady basis doesn't leave you subject to the concerns of what's going on out there. Like, I mean, you have some concern, but you're not like, like, oh God, what are we gonna do? It's just like we got things to do, and we got stuff to do. May I post an economic related YouTube link? Yeah, go for it. Alright, I thought that's where his idea came from, honestly. Alright, Yui, are you going to grow any weed in your garden? I don't know. The hard part about growing weed in the Pacific Northwest is that you have to have a variety that is geared for the outdoors of the Pacific Northwest, because ultimately you can grow some pretty decent plants outside, but they end up, by the time you get to the harvest time when the buds are good, then you're going to end up like with a lot of moldy weed, because of the atmosphere. It's just so moist and dreary and wet, and it doesn't dry out very fast, and so you have a lot of bud rot and mold that ends up, getting onto the plants right when they're at their prime. So as far as like an ornamental, then yeah, maybe, that might be kind of fun. But as far as trying to grow for any kind of use, no. Besides, it's super cheap here in Oregon, and there is no point in paying for it or growing it when it's so, you can pretty much get it for nothing. But I don't know, we'll see. Grow your own food is the best thing you can do. It is. Like, and I found we have 4 chickens, which are 1 year old this year. So they were got them, yeah, 1 year old this year, and they lay fairly regularly. And for the four of us, it's about enough. Like, I mean, they pretty much keep us supplied in eggs consistently. Like, we don't have to ever buy any eggs ever. And four hens is just about perfect for the scrap that comes off of the, from the kitchen or whatever. So really, we don't even spend that much in feed. I mean, we do feed and crack corn and stuff like that. But, the little bit that they roam around and the scraps that we give them, we don't even put that much money into them now at this point. And so we have an okay source of protein that comes from that. But yeah, anyway. As more individuals and business adopt Bitcoin, authoritarian regimes become increasingly isolated. I bet you need raised beds because of large amounts of rain. Raised beds are really popular around here. What we end up growing a lot is like, plants that are more hardy for the area. One of the things that I found is like growing tomatoes in our area is terrible. Like you can't do it. I mean, you can. I shouldn't say you can. There's some areas in little pockets of the region that you can grow, like, some decent tomato plants. Cherry tomatoes do much better than the full-on bigger tomatoes. The full-on, full-size tomatoes, for whatever reason, the plants go into a blight, turn black, start to rot before you really get any decent product off of them. But the cherry tomatoes produce fairly quickly and easily. So most of the time when we grow like things like tomatoes, it would be like the cherry tomatoes, which do a lot better than the other ones. Of course, all the ground stuff, carrots and beets. Sarah grows the beets for the tops. Like we don't even grow them for the beet itself, but just for the beet tops. And so she'll plant like 50 of them in a small area. And as they're spitting out the new tops, she'll pick those just about every day and then make salads out of that. So it's like almost a daily salad that you can get off of beet tops, just from a small patch of it too. Moving on. So many comments. All right. Well, I'm going to go once the family gets back. I was going to go with them. That's why I was going to end the video, but I guess they decided to take off without me. So all you need is plant, food, rice, and beans. No need 42 kill animals. Or for you to kill animals. You're right. There's no need for it, but they're tasty and that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't know how to say it, man. I mean, I like ribeyes, Had a great interview with UE a few months back. Financial firefighter. Oh yeah, right on. That was a good one. Did you guys happen to catch the Zuber presentation that I had done down in Vegas? I left a link on it on the community page. It was really good. I didn't go back and listen to the whole thing because I have a hard time like watching myself, especially on stage. I'm like my own worst critic. I'm like, oh God, look at the way you're stuttering or whatever. But I had great comments back on it. So yeah, red beets are especially nutritious. Yeah, I mean I couldn't believe like how much I would like to say like maybe 2-3 months of like pulling tops almost every single day. What was the other one we grew? Oh, acorn squash. That was a really one that did really well for us too. She grew an acorn squash plant that like vined up over the top of the fence that we had surrounding the garden, and then grew across the top of the chicken coop that was next to it. It was funny. Bacon. All right. Do you think banks are gonna crash or not? No, I don't think so. And the only reason why I don't think that they're going to crash is because the Federal Reserve for the last year, when they had the Bank Term Funding Program up and running, they were like pushing through these banks to get their balance sheets in a position in which that the assets that they have on their balance sheet are easily liquidable, right? And this is something that they had talked about. Like they were like, you guys are all screwed up here. While we have this Bank Term Funding Program up in use figure out your balance sheets so they're not all screwed up, right? And they went through and regulated them, made them change it around or whatever it is so that they had their balance sheets more in line with a liquidity shock issue, that they could unload those assets and be able to pay the depositors what it is that they had on deposit with the bank. And that was like one of the things that they had done over the last year. So now, knowing that, and knowing that they're going to have issues, like everybody knows that there's going to be liquidity issues coming. Like, there is no doubt. The Fed has spoken about it. The Treasury has spoken about it. It's like it's spoken about, right? But nobody wants to, like, raise any alarms or anything else. Like, they don't want to, like, freak everybody out. So there's, like, it's not being talked about, and it's just crazy because they know this is coming, right? And they said it for a while now. Whether or not it's going to be terribly impactful, maybe another story. Because they know it's coming, they are going to have tools to deploy that nobody has heard of or expects, right? They may have heard of them, but they don't expect them because they're not being talked about, because they can only be used in unusual and exigent circumstances. So if there ever is a liquidity issue where banks are failing, that's an unusual and exigent circumstances. And then these bang, right? These new systems, these new programs, these ideas start to become deployed, right? And like, everybody was just like, oh wow, nobody saw that coming. It was just like, of course we didn't, right? I mean, how could we? They can't tell, they don't tell us about stuff that they're going to use in emergency purposes in case this particular emergency comes up, because then the market would price that in. That's what's, like, weird about the whole thing. It's all psychological, right? I mean, we got to remember that. Like, all this stuff that I talk about and everything, like, people want to be real mathematical about it. This is the hardest part for an economist out there, for most people who are trying to learn economy, is that they want it to be very mathematical. They wanted to say, okay, there's formulas to this. Let's, like, look at the formula and figure this thing out. That's not the way it works. Again, it's organic, right? So it's just like, the way that this thing operates is going to be so much different from what, a lot of people want to think. And, part of that is that it's not necessarily a systematic thing where it's going to be going through this process just like this. A lot of it has to come down to your perception and how it is that you then begin to conduct yourself. And that's like the majority of monetary policy right now, right? Is how it is that they have control over the idea of what it is that they are going to do and how you are going to react to that. That is the monetary policy, not the adjustment of interest rates, right? Because the adjustment of interest rates takes, it has a lag time, so it doesn't even really impact the economy for 6 months to a year, right? But the idea of it has an immediate impact on markets and people's perceptions and what it is that they do. And if they have an idea that this is the permanent way of it's going, like, then they will react in a much different way than if they don't know what's going to happen, right? So if it's open-ended in a situation like we're in right now, it comes down to the words coming from the Federal Reserve. They could guide markets any way they want. See, I knew this was going to happen. I knew that they were going to position the markets to be in a place that they could say, hey, we don't know, we might be able to go, we have, either way. And they can confuse the markets to such a way that then their narrative, the communications that they put out there, can then adjust the way that the people's perception of what it is that's going to happen with interest rates would have a real impact on the economy, as if they had to move the interest rates. And this is important to understand, because it's not the actual moving of it, it's the idea of it. That is the monetary policy. And that part is so hard to because it's not mathematical, right? It's not systematic. It's very, like, emotional, right? It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like, guys aren't emotional, so they don't get it. Like, I mean, I guess don't think emotionally. I shouldn't say that, because there's a lot of guys who are emotional. All right. Do you think you'll get a chance to talk to Hugh Hendry at the next Rebel Capitalist? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to try and talk to everybody I can, so I know I'm sure All Nighter will. I think regardless of what happens this year, within 5 years, printer goes brr for sure. I wouldn't be surprised. It's not mathematical. It's based off of a feel. Either you get it or you don't. Yeah. Dan in Alabama. Good point. Uh, over the last 6 months, I've kept as liquid as possible. No Diddy. And it's paying off. Bank rates are paying more than markets right now. uh, let me cruise back up here. Jesus, can one use human waste to garden? Probably, I imagine one could. Okay. Here's something. I had at one time I lived in a house that had the biggest apple tree in the county, like probably the biggest apple tree ever. Um, in fact, there's a video on it on my Everyday Napa channel, but this apple tree was huge, and I kid you not, it would drop somewhere around 5,000 apples a year, right? I mean, it was insane. Like every day after school, when I get home, I would have to load up this wheelbarrow full of apples and take it down to the field and dump it. And at the end of the season, when all the apples had fallen, we would have this mound of rotting apples out in the field. It was just huge. Um, but anyway, it sat on a broken septic system. Uh, what was else with there? Okay, any personal ideas on how long to go long? Any ideas on how to go long volatility? I don't. I don't really like even think about how it is that I can do that. Like I just buy into I dollar cost average on all my investments, so I don't try to market time anything. And I go for investments that I plan on holding for years and years. And that's how I play the game. Like I'm not an investor. Like I don't invest. I study economics. I try to understand the flow of money. I try to understand how it is that I can best position myself, what it is that I think like market trends might go towards, as far as like people's interest into, particular industries or something like that. I try to look at how it is that manufacturing bases are going to, be impacted by not only like because I mean you have like ideas of political influence that go into it, which are major, but then you also have like the economic effects of like the Cantillon effect that really starts to play out as well, where manufacturing bases are going to find the cheapest places to manufacture. These are the type of things that I think about. Like I don't think about like how it is that I can invest money and make a bunch of money. I do that at times, but that's not really what I'm coming out here on this channel to do. Like, I think you could take this information and then apply it to what it is you already know, and then use that for investment purposes. Like I've had people tell me that's what they do, and so I mean, it's just like you use it for your own entertainment purposes, but when it comes to me personally, I invest, but I invest in a very casual low intensity way. It's a dollar cost average every month, very boring, very, like nonchalant. I don't think about it. I don't go and study it every day. I don't even really concern myself with it much. I just do it. And it's done pretty well, like in things like Coinbase. I mean, I invested in Coinbase, dollar cost averaged all last year into it, and it's like up 250% or something like that. So that was a pretty good deal, a pretty nice run, but I couldn't have anticipated that. I was just buying into it because it was Coinbase, and I thought, well, I might as well get some exposure to it, and so that's what I did it for. No other reason, and it did well. Uh, no limits, and the one I was talking about matures in the next month. There are several this year. Yes, the average person, dollar cost average is the best outcome. Otherwise, it's hard. You have to chart 24/7. Yeah, and that's what I found. Like I tried doing like day trading with cryptocurrencies and stuff like that, and I mean, I had fun with it and I did okay at times, but for the most part, I didn't do very well, and I just like, I got other things I can do. Once you pick an investment, you'll find yourself pushing it without even realizing it. I don't think so. Like, I mean, I think some people know about the portfolio that I have, but I don't really talk about it that much. And the only time I've ever really brought it up when people actually ask me about it. But I'd never really pushed it. The only thing I ever pushed was things that people paid me for, which never felt really good. So I never did that. I don't like doing that either. So I don't push things like that. The only thing I really push is gold and silver because I think it's a great insurance policy. And I do push Bitcoin on a lesser extent for the same reason. So, yeah. All right. I made 300,000 on uranium long term, commodities maybe. What is that there? BlackRock will do good in the long term. NFA. I think there is a limit on how much you can put in the higher paying bonds. Oh, you guys are talking about investments. All right. How do you think your computer is setting the time? Internet time is atomic clock time. Oh, we're back to atomic. Yeah. Uh, Well, guys, I think this is probably long enough for our live stream. It was a lot of fun talking about this. I mean, I thought the stagflation analogy about using the wall and the amount of material going into it and the cost of that material, I think that was a pretty good analogy to use to describe stagflation. But ultimately, what we are facing is a slowdown in economic activity. And I think that's probably the biggest concern that people should probably take on is that even though you have these numbers coming in, like the GDP might be a number, like a dollar amount of this, like, hey, look at this, it's growing, it's doing well. The actual economic activity that has taken place under that probably is not reflected in the same sense when they discuss those numbers, right? So when I look out there at my personal day job and what it is that I see going on, I see a slowdown happening. I see less people buying things, and when they are buying things, they're buying cheaper products or less of them or smaller quantities of them. And this is the economic activity that ends up resulting out there with labor and, everything else that, contributes to the economy. So we can see this happening now. We see it slowing down, and that's the trend that we are on, right? It's not the other way where, people are doing more transactions and more activity. It's going the other way. And how long that continues for and how deep it goes, that will end up being the major question on whether or not we end up in a recession, depression, and how long that really lasts for. So anyhow, it was a great time talking with you guys. We have 361 people watching with 258 likes. $5 in super chat because I think I accidentally deleted one of the super chats. I am so sorry about that, brother. Uneducated Economist, good dishes to do a live stream. Yeah, I've tried to talk her into it. I think her channel is now to the point that she could actually do a live stream. So I was thinking that we should go and do something like special for that level achievement for the channel. But if not, we should come out here and we should talk about like, the way she buys groceries or something because she does killer. Like when she goes to the grocery store, everybody like I hear people complaining a lot about how much, and they are. She complains too about the prices, but she still comes home with an insane amount of groceries. And when she tells me how much she spent, I still am like really amazed at how well that she can shop. And I think that would probably be pretty cool for her channel to discuss something like that on, or even on this channel or something. Anyhow, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.